two things that are very interesting here is they're making this play about AI. AI is the big boogeyman, and they want to put guardrails on that. And the other part is the business model. They say we're not getting paid enough, or we're not getting paid the way we used to, and that's not fair. So there's a lot to unpack there. I want to put this in the broader context because there's some strategy that's going on. This is a negotiation, these two big parties, and what is going to happen in the absence of an agreement. What impact will this have on the future of content or the future of entertainment? Is this the space that AI is going to fill? To your point, how will AI impact the greater creator economy? We're in that phase right now. We'll see what that does. In a couple years, we'll be looking back at this and saying, oh my gosh, here was that moment. Like the last time there was a strike and the writers weren't writing, that was the age of reality TV. And now I don't have this number, but the share of reality TV to real scripted content, I wonder what that share is, but we can point back to that time and say that's when that happened. The other interesting thing about this is that one of the biggest exports of American culture is Hollywood. And while we're in the middle of this strike, daily life hasn't changed for majority of people. This would not happen in any other industry. UPS workers go on strike and things are going to shut down. If FedEx employees go on strike, things are going to shut down. If the train employees go on strike, things are going to shut down. And the average person's life would be impacted by that. While we're going to see the impact of this strike play out, it is not clear that the everyday person will be impacted. This almost seems to be a very Hollywood-centric problem that doesn't have as much reverberating impact as, let's say, a UPS strike would have.
Well, so what's so funny about that is that, like, we would be remiss because you mentioned UPS. I just wanted to be clear that UPS strike was avoided because we knew that we could not go without UPS, right? Like, I mean, I'm sure like Amazon, like there's a whole bunch of large corporations that were like, y'all need to figure this out because we need to get our packages to people. And I think that's the thing. I think materially, so there's a couple points here that I think is like super significant here. The average person in the United States does not understand how important, entertainment is probably to our economy. Right. When we hear about $billion movies, right, the first thing we think is, well, why? Like, that's a lot of money. Like, that's a tremendous amount of money. And, everyone's getting paid. But we know for a fact they aren't. Someone I was talking to, so obviously part of my background is that, I worked at Netflix. And, a few of us were in chat together and we were like, materially, virtually every day we worked, we got paid more than, I think they said, more than 60% of all of those SAG-AFTRA workers make less than $26,000, and $26,000 is what they have to make to get health insurance. And so virtually every single Netflix employee got paid more than the SAG-AFTRA. And materially, we are not the same value as those people, because if there's no content on Netflix, there's no Netflix. I was just in the background making sure that our data models and our Netflix game and all that stuff worked really effectively, but I could have just not shown up and we would have still worked, but it wouldn't have worked if the actors and actresses and producers and writers and directors and special effects people didn't do what they wanted. I think interesting points here. I think as a society, right, like we are coming to this reckoning of what does it look like to do good work. People can do any type of work, but good work is ones that you can do work, you get paid appropriately so that you can move your life or your family's life forward. It's a great example of what this might look like. The second part of this that I think is super significant is the contracts have been bad for a long time. This is one of the things that I think is most interesting because a lot of people don't understand why it's such a big deal now. Leaders across like the Writers Guild, the Directors Guild, Producers Guild, and also the Actors Guild. And they're all saying if we do not make a stand now, our returns will continue to diminish in a tremendously devastating way. I started looking back. For instance, when it came to VHS, they didn't really put their foot down. They really did not want to allow for widespread VHS adoption, for instance, because they knew that it was going to create a high likelihood for piracy. And so then they started losing there. They really didn't want streaming to happen because, again, they were like, this is another vector for piracy because, like, why can't someone just screen record the streaming thing and just put it anywhere they want it to go? And so they kept moving. Like many of these guilds, they all just allowed these things to continue to be put as a part of the deal. And so it's created this difference in rev share. And so I think that there's a significance here because, like, you, Tammy, you and I, we've worked for tech companies, we work for consulting companies, we now work for ourselves. And so the reality is that on day one, the first thing that we usually negotiate is our equity, right? We say it's not enough to just give us a salary. We want to have a piece of the pie because we want to have ownership of this company. And so one of the reasons that we work so hard is because we wanted to make sure that our equity worked. I remember when I was at Apple, it's when Apple first became a $1 trillion company. And I kept my stock from Apple and it doubled. And I was like, now I understand why people work for Apple for 20, 25, 30 years, because you can actually see the value of your work and you can see it in your, not only in what you do and how people perceive it, but also in your bank account. And so it's
Hold on for a moment. Hold on for a moment, because I don't want to miss your point. I think what you're saying is that SAG-AFTRA and the WGA have repeatedly failed to anticipate the impact of technology and that they're suffering the consequences. And I think that I buy that point. This seems to be a widespread issue in the entertainment industry, with other examples in the music business. Rather than trying to prevent technological changes, they should be focusing on how they can adapt and remain valuable to their members. And I think the end point of all of this is that ultimately it seems that they need more technologists on their team to stay ahead of the curve. The argument is essentially that Hollywood cannot function without them, being SAG-AFTRA and WGA, the members that they represent. And this is a product market fit question, PMF in a sense. And this is the phase that they are in right now. Hollywood will test that assumption. Are writers and actors truly indispensable to the industry, or are they simply just trying to protect their own interests?